For today's video, I'm going to show you how to validate JavaFX text fields for decimal point numbers. Now in this demo that we're going to create, and see I've got a text field. If I enter in an invalid number, a letter, you can see down here it's printing out the key presses. It also gives you an error message, an error image, and an actual error label. Once you press a valid number, the error message will disappear. If you enter in a decimal point and continue on past the actual stipulated maximum length that we allow in this text field, it'll display an error message. Once you go back to press a valid key again, the error message disappears. Now you can see this prevents you from pressing a decimal point anywhere else and also entering in 2 decimal points. Now how do you achieve this? Well, the obvious answer is you count how many decimal points are actually in the string. So if they try and enter in a second decimal point and you count that there's actually already one in the string, then obviously you don't allow the second decimal point. So we're going to create a simple method that allows you to count for anything that's inside a string to see how many occurrences there are. Now in the second part of this, I'm going to also show you how to do this for regular expressions. To demonstrate, I'll just bring that up. Now you can see here I'm also printing out the key presses, and this achieves exactly the same thing, where you can't put a decimal point anywhere within this string itself. Now to achieve this, we're using a regular expression. Now you'll find that there's lots of regular expression examples out there, and you can find on what we call cookbooks as well, which will have a lot of regular expressions for validating different things. But what we've done here is we're actually using the regular expressions with the previous code that we've created to actually allow it to work with key presses and allowing you to stipulate what keys can and cannot be pressed in conjunction with using this regular expression that we check for right here. Now in the next video, I'll actually go through regular expressions, and what we're going to do is actually create our own regular expression validator. What I mean by this, just to quickly demonstrate just here, is we're actually going to create our own interface where you can validate regular expressions, see what key presses are actually put in, and then actually test it down here for an actual key press while you're typing. Okay, let's get this started by opening up SceneBuilder. Now in SceneBuilder, what we have here is basically just a text prompt, which is just prompting the user to enter a number. We have a text field for a text field input. In the code section of this, we have an FX ID to identify the text field in the code, and we have 2 actions basically on key typed and on mouse clicked as well, which you'll see in the code in NetBeans. Now the other thing we have is an actual image for the error message, which also has an FX ID, and the error label, which has an FX ID. Now over in NetBeans, we have all the code coded. If you wanted more explanation about the code, watch my JavaFX TextField validation project, where I'll explain how these classes are coded fully and how to set up JavaFX projects and run them. Don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel and on my website to receive all the code. Okay, we just have our main class here, which is everything to stage the scene for FXML SceneBuilder created project. And over here we have the validate, which is what we use to control the FXML created project in SceneBuilder. And in here we actually create 2 instances of our objects that we need for this particular text field input. If you have multiple text field inputs, you create more than 1 instance for the validate text field. But for the returned object error message, obviously just recreate the one because it's only used once for each return. Up here is the validate text field class and the error message class. Now in the FXML validate number class, only couple of things I've changed is just a little bit of the code. I've just added in this beep sound in here if we actually detect an error message being returned from the boolean from the object once we try to validate that text field input, and also just the image itself that we display to the actual screen, And if we actually go to clear the error message itself, we just remove that image down here. Over here in the validate text field is where we basically are validating the actual input. Now the difference here between the previous code that I've shown you is we're basically just checking to see if it is a digit itself. Don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel and on my website to receive all the code. Now, as I said in the beginning, what we've actually done here to check for decimal points rather than just an actual numeric number, we've got a method here called countStringMatches, which is looking at the past string for the occurrences of how many times this string here appears inside this. Now, if it's greater than 1, meaning that they've pressed the actual decimal point twice, and they've pressed the actual decimal point here, we need to remove that second decimal point. What I've done here is I've created another method where, because we're using this twice now, this bit of code, where we delete the character in the string itself, in the actual text field input, at this actual position. And down here is where that actual extra method is, to remove that at this actual character position, and then returning that string that we've manipulated with the removing of the actual second decimal point itself. Now in here, now for the actual countStringMatches method, what we're doing is we're setting the index to 0, which means we're looking at the start of the string itself. And then every time we find the actual occurrence, we're actually equaling to the next search in the string. And then we're forwarding that of the length of the actual search that you send through. So we're skipping over the search string length for each new index location that we need to search for. If it doesn't find an occurrence at all, it'll just return 0. But if it does find an occurrence of it, then we'll just keep going through this while loop for every occurrence that it finds, then return that actual found number of occurrences of this search string. Now in this instance of using this actual method, it's only ever going to equal 2, but you can use this method for multiple different things that you may require it for. Now basically what we're doing up here also is we're just checking for the actual text field length to make sure that we're not exceeding the maximum stipulated that we've passed through in this actual method here for validate double. If we do find that, we set the actual boolean to true for return object, and we set the error messages to actually be given to the end user. And we remove that character that's exceeded the length, and we set the cursor caret position back to where it was, so it seems seamless to the end user. And then down here we're just returning the actual object itself. Now to show you how it's done with a regular expression, over here in the actual code itself, here we're actually tracking the cursor positions, and we're also looking at the old contents of the string as well. So if they do press Control V, we actually can prevent that from happening, because that obviously they'll be able to enter in something invalid because we're actually doing this as a type. Now over here, what we're doing here is we're checking to see if it is a decimal by using an actual regular expression. But what we have to do extra is we need to check to see if the actual text field is empty, because if I press backspace, then we will get an actual exemption error from Java. So down here where we actually check for is digit, we're just using an actual regular expression. Now like I said before, you'll find a lot of regular expression cookbooks, what we call online, which will show you how to do regular expressions for different things. You'll find some of them work correctly and some don't work quite as they state, because it may be different for Java and it may be from a different language itself. Now up here, what we're doing here is if we do find out that they have typed in something that's not a valid decimal and the text field is not empty, we're removing that character that's been entered in, which is not valid, and we're actually just putting it back to the current caret position so it all seems seamless to the user. And what we do down here is we're actually checking for the paste key and then removing that if we actually do try and paste, and then give the actual appropriate error message in there. What we're also doing still is we're also checking for the actual length of the actual string, and then removing that extra character which has exceeded the length of the string that we have stipulated by the text field max input. So having a look at this code, there is a lot less that we're having to do by checking all the char codes that are coming in. But you will find, like I said, sometimes you'll actually have a look at some of these regular expressions and find they don't quite work as you expect. So that's the reason why in the next video, as I explained in the beginning, We're actually going to create this, which is going to be our own regular expression checker. So if we take this regular expression we've got down here that we've used and just copy this out, and we'll put this into this program. So what you'll see here is you put in your regular expression in here, and then down here as you type, it'll show you the actual keys as you press them and any valid keys that come up as well by giving you an error message. Now over here in your regular expression, the other thing as well is if you actually enter in a regular expression which is incorrect, it'll also give you a warning message down here. Now how I've done this, I'll show you in the next video, but this will allow you to check any regular expressions that you find on the internet and actually test them while you're typing down here to make sure if they're going to work correctly as you expect. And this way you can actually create seamless text field inputs for any type of valid input that you require. You can also create your own regular expressions in here. You can see here it's actually giving you error messages as you go along. So if we create something like this where we're just looking for a single number, this will actually only allow you to enter in one valid key. I look forward to showing you this in the next video.